For the next session, we are joined by leaders at the forefront of driving change across, of all things, the live events industry. And so it is with huge pleasure I pass over to our host for the next panel, Michael Sheldrick, co-founder and Chief Policy, Impact and Government Affairs Officer at Global Citizen. Over to you, Michael.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the RELX SDG Inspiration Day 2026. My name is Michael Sheldrick. I'm one of the co-founders of Global Citizen, and I have the privilege of moderating this next session. For those who know a little bit about Global Citizen, you know that every year during Climate Week here in New York City, we host the big Global Citizen Festival. What you may not know is in recent years, we've taken great strides to reduce our environmental footprint so that we can show through the power of our example what is possible, what we can achieve, and what we can all do if we're to achieve net zero emissions over the coming decades. This session I'm about to moderate is about the fact that live events, trade shows, festivals, music tours, yes, they bring people together, but they also come often with very significant environmental footprints, from energy use to transport to waste to water and other infrastructure. And what we're seeing is as the pressure to reach net zero intensifies, the events and live music industries, including event organizers like myself, we're being pushed to rethink how experiences get designed, get delivered, and how they get scaled. The good news is there's a lot of great innovators out there showing the way and showing what's possible. And I'm delighted to be joined by three of them. So with me on today's discussion is Joyce Leveston, the CEO of the Javits Convention Center here in New York City. We have Hugh Jones, the CEO of RELX. And of course, we have Luke Howell, who is the sustainability lead for Coldplay, the Glastonbury Festival, amongst many other initiatives. And together, we're going to be exploring how the live events and music industry is responding in practice. We're going to be looking at what's working, where progress has proven difficult, and how innovation, data, and collaboration can accelerate change without compromising creativity, the experience of the audience, or indeed the viability commercially for many of these ventures. And so with that, I want to kick us off. And Joyce, I'm going to come to you first. Just before Joyce, I mean, it's amazing at Javits Center. I've had the privilege of going there. I know that you are paving the way when it comes to reducing emissions and embedding sustainability into all your venue operations. And I guess to kick us off, I'd love to hear, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for convention centers and venues such as yours to accelerate climate action over the next 5 years?
Well, thank you so much, Mick and RX for having me here today. So appreciate all of you that are here and listening to this today. I will tell you that there are so many opportunities within the next 5 years. And I think our biggest opportunity really is in the energy section. Where it comes to like energy efficiencies, I think is where we're going to see the greatest impact moving forward across the industry itself. Javits is moving towards the what we call BAS. A lot of the industry has the BMS, but we're moving toward like the building automation systems, where we're incorporating not just what we're doing, but how we're even adding the processes and the sustainability into our model for operations. Like you said before, we have our green roof, which you was talking about. We have like almost a 7-acre green roof, and that green roof is seeded with a natural installation, right? That installation, it actually can absorb over 7 million gallons of stormwater runoff.
Wow.
In terms of absorbing it. As a result of being able to do that and having such a large scale, we have done something like change the temperature around our region of our area by a whole 1 degree Celsius by being able to have something at that scale. That just goes to show you, like, we've been intentional about how we're really going to do this thing, but also how energy and sustainability is pushing all the way across our operations, whether it's our green roof, whether it's the water and rain-off storm that we're collecting, or whether it's our next step is our battery energy storage system that we have. We're talking about being able to transform ourselves off of the grid, off of the New York grid, during times where we have like demand response opportunities, where we could literally carry something like, I want to say it's somewhere around 14 million milliwatts of power on our own that we produce here. And then we can transfer that off of the grid anywhere from 7 to 30 days, depending on how much activity we have in the building. So, energy is definitely the future, the automation of energy, so that we know where we're using lights at, where the most energy is being used in the building at the time or not being used, and that energy can get transferred to other parts of the building. We're super excited about the work that we're doing here and the commitment that we have when it comes to net zero climate.
Wow, that's incredible. And definitely, if you're in New York for Climate Week this September, definitely, I know, Javits, you always have a lot of events. I remember a couple of years ago speaking around music sustainability at that during the lead up to the festival. And that's a good segue to our next guest, Luke. And Luke, we've known each other over several years, and Joyce was just talking about energy. She was talking about battery storage. The Global Citizen Festival, and full transparency, for many years, like most major festivals, we were powered by diesel generators, right? And so for us, we wanted to become a use case and show that actually you could use battery storage to power the festival. Luke and the Coldplay team rallied behind us, and we were actually fortunate enough a couple of years ago to transition for the first time to battery storage. It was pretty incredible. It's these 4 units at the back. I believe they were named after the AC/DC, or as we say in Australia, Akadaka vendors. And everyone was coming and saying, wow, it actually works. And, the lights of the show aren't going to turn off halfway through. And Luke, you helped us do that. And indeed, throughout Coldplay's music of the Sophia's tour, it really did become a benchmark for sustainable live touring. And I guess I'd love to hear from you. What are the biggest lessons and insights you've learned personally so far in balancing large-scale live events with ambitious climate goals?
Yeah, thank you, Mick. And I mustn't forget as well, in celebration of what Global Citizen have achieved, we actually used batteries on your show in in Belém at the end of last year.
That's right.
Yeah, taking batteries to all kinds of different places to reduce diesel use. But yeah, you're right. In terms of how events, outdoor live events in particular, have been traditionally delivered, diesel power and diesel use has been heavily relied upon. In more recent times, a lot of work has gone into utilizing battery systems in live events, and one of the things that the Coldplay team achieved was they developed a touring mobile battery system that they could take on tour to negate the need for having generators running during the show, and that was trialed in many parts of the world. I think over 80 shows were completely powered purely from the battery system, which proves that operational sustainability, particularly around energy, is achievable even at scale. And I love what you were saying, Joyce, about the BES system, the battery energy storage systems being utilized on venues. I think in the built environment world, battery systems are being recognized as being these really advantageous assets. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see a little bit more of that adoption and incorporation into live events to replace the need for generators. Obviously, a battery still needs energy going into it, but even then, if you're able to charge your battery from the grid is, even in parts of the world where the grid is more dirty, you can still lower your emissions than burning diesel generator next to where your event is. It's it helps with air quality, noise is reduced. There's a lot of additional benefits. So the solutions exist. Coldplay have showcased this. Billie Eilish has done some amazing work, showcasing this as well. A couple of years ago at Lollapalooza Festival, they started putting solar PV systems out front of the stage to charge batteries ahead of her show. And then the following year, the organizers of Lollapalooza went, you know what, we can do this at an even bigger scale. And they took the whole stage off of diesel generators onto battery systems, which they've done for a couple of years now. And what we've seen in an events context is that some of these solutions can actually help you save money. And I'm thinking, right now with what's happening globally in the energy sort of market, if you're reliant on diesel generators, you're going to be paying premium prices for your fuel, and that's just a spiraling cost that has no potential end to it. So if you're able to be less reliant on that, you can actually start to potentially save money in your operation. And what we saw with Coldplay is a great example, is you can also encourage new partnerships. And Mick, this from what has happened with Global Citizen Festival, there's some amazing large scale business partners that have got brilliant solutions and are interested in coming on board to support the sustainability program or the decarbonization of a live event. Partly because there's an operational benefit, reduces emissions, but also there's a storytelling, communication, fan engagement, and participation aspect to it as well. I think the MIT study, so MIT were co-funded by Live Nation, Warner Music Group, and Coldplay over the last couple of years to study the carbon impact of live music and touring in the US and the UK. And Mick, you were part of that advisory committee, that fed into that. We have a kind of evidence base and a quantified figure now for what the total emissions for the industry is. And what we also saw was that figure could come down quite a lot. I think it's 1.1 million tons of carbon in the US. Sorry, 1.1% of total carbon emissions, not 1.1 million. It's much higher than that. It's 1.1% of total emissions in the UK and the US are related to live event activity. That figure can potentially come down quite substantially. And now, the other aspect of that is 1.1%. It's not a big figure, but what we also recognized in that study was that more than 50% of the population of the US and more than 60% of the population of the UK engage in live events. So if we take people on a fun but educational journey when they come to live events, we can start to move the needle in perhaps a bigger way than just the impacts of the live event itself.
No, I love that, Luke. And as you said, we shouldn't diminish the impact this has on direct emissions. I mean, 1.1% is still massive, and anything we can do gets it down. But to your point, that power of storytelling, and the thing I love about through the Coldplay's most recent tour was when you would go at the start, you would show that great video that would break it all down, right? From the kinetic energy translated through the dance floor, the solar panels on the roof of the stadiums, the battery, everything goes down for waste. And what that does is it shows people actually these challenges are solvable. And if it can become something that gets scaled across other industries, I mean, what I loved about showcasing the batteries at the Global Citizen Festival was, it wasn't just event organizers coming, it was their sponsors coming and having a look, and it was spreading the power of battery storage as well. So we shouldn't underestimate the power of advocacy, the catalytic effect that music can have in terms of spurring this broader industry-wide change. And Hugh, that's a good segue to you, because I would love to ask you, based on your experience and your work, what, just on that point Luke raised, I mean, from your perspective, what does smarter, lower impact live experiences mean operationally for RX? Because we are actually seeing people, I mean, the World Economic Forum have said this, more people want to go to events, more people want experiences now more than ever.
Well, I appreciate that. We live that life every day all around the world in hundreds of venues. And unfortunately, not every venue behaves like Joyce's. And so the first thing to understand that we have a great deal of power. We have a great deal of economic power to venues to suggest operational change. We learn from places like Javits, and we can bring what we learn there all around the world. And we can do it with a carrot, a smile, and a checkbook. And we can do it the other way too, which means that while I understand that a trade show is a carbon consolidating event, which means maybe you take one flight instead of 10 to do your business, I need to know, as part of a lower impact live experience, I need to know what my carbon footprint is, which means that the venue has to be able to measure it. It has to be able to measure it for the halls that I'm using and how I'm using it so that I can reduce it, offset it, and make it better and better every day forever. And so the stick part of that, of course, is I can move the show. And so what we've been doing is explaining to venues around the world that one of the elements of having something as large and prestigious as an RX show in your venue is you must give us this. You must invest in your venue to be able to help us understand this issue. And you might think that that's something that is kind of ubiquitous around the world, but there are plenty of countries where this discussion is not happening. And so it is incumbent upon us to make sure that it does happen, and to say, you know what, our show has been with you for 20 years, and it's not going to be with you on the 21st. I'm afraid I'm moving the show. That certainly gets people's attention. So you start with that. Once you have a show in a place where you're working in partnership with the venue, then there are all sorts of smarter impacts that you can bring to that show experience. Some sound small, but remember, like in our shows, we have 4 million square meters of carpet, or we used to anyway. And now we ask, do we really need a carpet? And if we do, and that's a big business, by the way, selling carpet to trade shows is a huge business. Do we really need a carpet? Where do we need a carpet? Can we reuse the carpet? Can we recycle the carpet? Yes, perhaps you can. And if you can do that, you can put that on a scorecard. So now we have a sustainability scorecard for all of our events. And that, I just gave the silly carpet example, although it's not so silly. It helps us assess our actions in many areas. What is the energy we use? What do we do with the food and beverage waste? How do we build stands that are renewable, that think of them as Legos? We have ways of building stands where I can use just about every piece of that stand down the road at some other stand. And we help our exhibitors build stands with that intention. If you're going to build a stand, make sure that it's something that can be packed up and trucked out, not packed up, trucked out, and put in a landfill. And so the other is that we of course use our carbon dashboards and our scorecards, and then we spread that out to the industry. So we actually write, when we learn something, we put it in what we call our sustainability playbook, which for the trade show organization, we make it public. I mean, all of you can download it today if you want. And in it we launched it in 2023 about what are all the things we're learning as we do these shows all around the world to make every show as sustainable as possible, and you can do it too as well. Because what we don't want in the industry is we don't want a bad actor. We want, they literally stink up the joint for the rest of us. We want everybody playing on this. We're all in this one together. And so we share our experiences. Every time we have a show and we've made a new improvement, we make sure that we share that and make sure everybody understands it. We also, in a show in a particular environment, there are organizations that you really should partner with to bring that show up. So, and they do certain elements. Like in France, we've partnered with organizations such as Re-Up and Green Bee event upcycling, and that reduces event waste. We don't have to create that process. It's theirs, and they're begging to be used. But it extends the life of event materials in that situation. And Green Bee recovers and redistributes the materials we use for a show, which include things like furniture, signage, flooring, all the build materials. In the U.S., these sound like silly examples, but they're not. We partnered with O-Town Compost at the PGA show, all food waste, is used, and all organic waste used to be sent to a landfill. Now it's not. We reduce what we do with all sorts of waste like that and turn it into compostable material that has a positive effect.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can imagine just a few years ago, nobody in the industry would be doing that. And so we kind of look for anything that's circular whenever possible. Now, obviously, the list is long. Whether you have a buffet or you have prepackaged meals in plastic containers, do you have bottled water, or do you have reusable water stations and things like that? On some of the shows, there are water stations that literally produce water from the air. There are some shows where the materials you use have to be not only recyclable, but have to be green in their upkeep, especially in shows that are in the alt energy space. In the alt energy space, which we have some of the largest shows in the world, we go around our own shows and get great ideas from our own shows. Like, what do you mean you can make water out of air? That's not possible. You can use solar energy to make water out of air? Show me more. How do I get that? Silly example, but of course you can do it. You actually can. You've read about it. You know it exists, but we do it. Same with things like battery storage, as you guys were mentioning. 10 years ago, the battery storage was in its infancy compared to where it is now, in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can use battery storage, and in the same way, it's not just you take it from the grid. You can take it from the grid when no one else is taking it from the grid, so your costs go way down.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take it from the grid in a way that it doesn't have to charge immediately. It can charge it can drip free for a long time, which means you can use a renewable source to charge that battery. It doesn't have to be a diesel, right? But in the world where we matter, and where it matters here is, this is scary, but there are places in the world that are powering major venues with coal, old line coal, and they don't measure. And what I've said to them, and my team has said to them, we will not be your partner in the years to come. We will move. There are lots of venues like Joyce's, and we'd rather have a long-term home at a place like the Javits Center than yours. And you only have to do that a couple times before they realize that we're serious. And we're very serious.
Wow. A powerful message. And within that, because you mentioned both the carrot and the stick, and I think the benefits you mentioned, lower cost ultimately in the long term if you commit to it, especially what we're seeing right now with diesel prices and costs. But also, there's a way to do it without sacrificing the experience of your audiences. Luke, one of the things I loved about the Coldplay story, and there's a great, I believe, BBC interview from 2019 or whenever it was, when Chris Martin committed, without, I don't think, discussing it with his team, but to halve their emissions for their next tour. In fact, I think he even promised not to tour again until they had figured out a way to halve their emissions. But anyone that went from the Head Full of Dreams tour to the most recent one will tell you that the experience only got better, right? Even though there was a 59% reduction. So there is a way to do it. All of those things you mentioned, Hugh, about removing carpet, all of those things, yes, there are the challenges, but there is a way to do this that doesn't sacrifice the experience of your audiences. Joyce, I want to come back to you, because Hugh gave a number of good case studies of partnerships, and even what he was mentioning as someone who is going to events and looking for venues. He was implicit about this requires collaboration, right, in order to drive change across organizers, venues, suppliers, attendees. And I wonder what examples you have around the types of partnerships or approaches that have been most effective in driving change at scale.
Yeah, I want to just, and I'll answer that. Thank you so much. I just want to go back a little bit when we were talking about the energy, to give you an example of what that really could look like when you're talking about the other energy initiatives that we have here, with the solar, with our battery storage, with our green roof. We actually were able to reduce our energy consumption by 26%. We sit on the same grid as Times Square. I'll give you an example, right? And I know that that's only about 2%, I think it is, of what that total grid is, but it's a very big number when it comes to energy. And that's why I'm so fixated on really having venues, because we take up such a big footprint in the cities that we're in, to really think about the initiatives that they could tap into when it comes to energy efficiencies. Circling back to what you were talking about in some of the things that that Hugh was talking about in terms of scale and what we could do. One of the programs, this is just one program that we have, but one of the programs that we have here at Javits is called our Javits Cares program. And you are 100% right. It takes a collaboration of everybody has to come to the table to think about our sustainability initiatives and our plans for the emissions to go across the board. I remember being at one of the other convention centers just like a year and a half ago, and we had a really big client where they were really looking to elevate to like a gold level of EIC for their show. And the venue that they were at they wanted to have a program where they could actually have the exhibitors donate, right? Leave product off and it not end up, in a landfill, as you were saying, to give back to the community. How do we do something sustainable? They did not have the partnership, right? They didn't have the community and local partnership. Well, Javits Cares here in Javits, we have those partnerships. We have a lot of local partnerships that we have with like the New York Housing Authority, Boys and Girls Clubs, Habitat for Humanity, all different local communities that we work with. We work with the exhibitors or the show organizers and the exhibitors, and we talk to them about our program. We're able to use our team, our cleaning team, our internal team to tag all of those products on the floor that could be reused, so that we can support our community, but also pull things off of what might end up in the landfill. As a result of that, we are giving away thousands of pounds. We are of new materials that are not going in the landfill, but actually going back and being reused. That's one of our big scale programs that we do here at Javits. And sometimes I'm literally on a cart, going down the loading dock, and I'm like, what is all this amazing stuff? And they're like, oh yeah, that just came out of one show and it's here today, Joyce, but by next Friday, all that material or 90% of that material will already have a place for reuse. It's an amazing program. It's just one small program. Or the other programs that we have, like Hugh was talking about, the carpet program. There is a program where that program, you, instead of using the standard carpet, there's a specialty carpet that is used, and then it is recycled, right, and reused back into the system. We have local companies right here in New York that we partner with to support our show organizers when they come in as alternatives, right? But it takes everybody. It takes my team, my employees. It takes our suppliers. It takes our vendors. It takes the exhibitors. It takes the show organizers. It takes it takes everybody in the ecosystem to be committed to it. And the thing that I love about Javits is that we are constantly having these conversations with our customers. We start out, when we do the walkthroughs, we start out talking about our sustainability program, but more importantly, how they can participate in it.
Well, you mentioned everyone in the ecosystem. Luke, to bring it back to you, one of the most important stakeholders in your ecosystem and those clients with which you serve is, of course, the fans. It's the audiences. It's those who travel often great distances to come to a live event like a music festival or a concert. And so that in itself has both its opportunities and its challenges. And I'm wondering if you could share, how have you and Coldplay and the other clients you work with, how have you approached engaging fans as part of this journey to bring them on board?
Yeah, sure. I suppose it's almost twofold. There's two aspects to it. One is, how do you help fans make decisions and choices about their travel that might lead to lower impact mode of transport being utilized? And I think a lot of people in the sustainability and events kind of community already knew this from their own events assessments, but the MIT study highlighted that sort of 60 to 80% of live music and event GHG impact, greenhouse gas impact, is associated with fan travel. But I think the key thing is not all of the responsibility should be on fans. Going back to what you just said about the ecosystem, Joyce, and I love that because it correlates amazingly well to the ecosystem map that MIT, put together. Around there's like 15 to 20 different stakeholder groups with sub-stakeholders within that, exactly as you were just describing. And there are a number of different responsibilities within that sort of stakeholder group. So yes, the artist probably has a responsibility to highlight, we're doing a show in New Jersey, say, here are all the different ways you can get there, and perhaps prioritize the communication around the ways you can get there from most sustainable, rather than going the nearest airport or the nearest car park. It's like, these are the public transport options, these are the those kind of things. Some artists have partnered with organizations like Uber and Uber Green to try to incentivize the uptake in electric vehicle use, and those kind of things. And I think one of the things that really stood out for me in a lot of the work that I do is sustainability shouldn't be and isn't a barrier for creativity. It's an opportunity, and I always think of engaging fans is a creative process, so why can't sustainability just factor into that creative process? So there's the information, sure, here are the different ways you can travel, here are the bus routes, here are the subway routes, and here are the electric vehicle charging points along the way. But also getting fans to think about and feel what sustainability and climate kind of engagement means. And you've been to Coldplay shows, Mick, you've seen all the different ways. There's kinetic energy dance floors. We have these dance parties where fans can literally jump up and down ahead of the show to generate energy that there's then put into batteries to then deliver the show. Later on, we have bikes. People can jump on bikes and do a similar sort of thing. The videos that you mentioned, all around are a big part of that as well. And there's actually, I don't know where on the internet it is, but I've seen it. Chris Martin gave an interview, I think it was probably not far off 20 years ago now, looking forward, dreaming big, sort of thinking, is there a way to harness the energy of fans? Because there's energy and there's energy, isn't there? There's an energy you get when you're on stage from the audience, and then there's the energy that you need to keep the lights on. And he was like, is there a way to harness that energy? 20 years later, he's, him and the band and that tour are literally doing it in stadiums now, harnessing the energy of fans to keep the lights on, to make that show experience even more exciting and memorable. And that is a sort of tacit way to take fans on a sustainability kind of journey and give them an experience that feels fun, it feels hopeful, it feels exciting. It doesn't feel like you're having a lesson taught to you at a college seminar. So I love the way that creativity can come into these sorts of things, and supplement and support the operational considerations, but also speak to that lived experience and that feeling of being at a live event and feeling like you're part of something, that kind of collective a sense of being being part of a movement of sorts. And
one of the global citizen, our fans are global citizens, that's what we call them, and with our events we give most of the tickets away to people who take action. And this coming week in Brazil, as part of Rio Nature and Climate Week, we're convening Global Citizen Live featuring Miss Lauryn Hill and Wycliffe John, the 30th anniversary of the school, together with Brazil's Luke Howell, one of their biggest artists. And one thing we're doing, we've already seen 1 million actions for tickets. We have 10,000 to give away. But one of the things we're doing with actually one of the nonprofits who do a lot of advocacy around these issues, who are actually surfers in Rio, but we're driving people to go to the beach and volunteer their time, clean up, and give tickets as a result of that. So you're right around using what we can both as incentives, using entertainment in order to mainstream and change behaviors. And Hugh, I want to bring this back to you because this is something that you've been talking about. And Luke mentioned a couple of things, a number of drivers. I remember when Coldplay came to Australia, for instance, to the point around not putting it all on the fans. One thing that they did is they worked with the government on that entire day of the show to make public transport free. And they said, if you show your ticket, train or at a bus, you will have transport for free. So we can use our power, event organizers, people putting on, to also drive policy change too at a much larger scale. But I want to come back to you because this is very much picking up on what you were saying before. How do you see the exhibition model in particular, maybe the live events industry as a whole? How do you see that changing over the next 5 years to respond to many of these sustainability challenges?
The first is on the public partnership. A lot of municipalities don't look at trade shows the way I would look at a trade show. Our passion is I'll build your business. We are in the business of building businesses. And yet many municipalities think of us as an arm in the tourism industry. How many hotel rooms did you fill and how many restaurants did your participants sit at? That really it minimizes the impact of what we do at a major trade show. And if you think about it, first of all, you can have 10 meetings, not one. You can have 10 in a day if you really want to. We'll match you up and all that. But the business that you conduct at a trade show is way more impactful than where you spent your night in the hotel and what you had for dinner. And so it's important that, it sounds crazy, but then think of it this way. Let's just say, let's just say that there's $100 million of business made at a huge trade show. Well, companies are going to invest 80% of that in the next thing, and they're going to save 20%. And so that means there's a multiplier effect, and that 100 million that you've made in that particular day has an enormous economic impact. And we go to the municipalities and governments and ministers to say that the economic impact of a vibrant trade show community will build your city if you do it well. And in return, once you understand that economic modeling, we need some smart lanes. We don't need traffic blocks. We need, if you have a pass, these are curated trade shows. So we know that they're a buyer. We know they're an exhibitor. You should be able to get on a hydrogen fueled bus. You should be able to get on a bullet train. You should be able to get to the show so they don't have to use a car. And there should be entire trains, because these things are just enormous, some of these shows, dedicated to the people going to that trade show. You show up, the train is waiting for you. Yes, we're ready to go. Or the buses are waiting for you. The police will change traffic flows and direct people to the trade show. And this sounds we just don't. I urge the audience here, please don't think of sort of like the top tier economies around the world here. I mean, like in the U.S. or in the U.K., this just might seem obvious to you. But if I'm in the middle of other countries in, say, Asia or Africa, I guarantee it is not obvious. Right? There will be no one telling the police to change the traffic patterns or to change the light patterns to get people to and from egress and ingress of the venue. You actually have to work with them. They won't even realize you're in town. And then what happens is you have huge traffic backups, and it's just a health and safety issue. And so what we do is we start at the very tippy top. There's normally a minister of business or a minister of tourism or someone that makes policy, and it's really the job of my senior team, and I educate them on what a major trade show in your city has a phenomenal effect. I mean, if I take what Chris Martin has done and I were to just put it through our economic models, I'm sure that his show has made the participants on that show economically successful. But if you actually think about what everybody spent and then the ripple and magnifying effect of what they spent, I bet you could argue that his economic impact is incredibly significant, in the billions of dollars. Pay attention. All we want is visas. I don't want people waiting if they're going to take an airplane, I want to be able to go in quickly, get through that airport and get to the venue in minutes. I want a special line. I want a dedicated line. I don't want backups. And so you start at the very top. And there are places that do get this. There are. I mean, obviously, Javits certainly gets this. And New York works carefully with Javits. Javits is one of the few venues in the United States that's viewed differently. It's viewed as a national center of economic activity. So the Javits Center gets access to the tippy top of security and safety and health and safety. If Joyce wants to call someone, they will take her phone call. Same thing in Las Vegas, where it's obviously a pastime in Vegas. This is a big deal in Vegas to host huge events. There are other places, Cannes the Palais, for example. But there are plenty where you have a CEO of a convention center who is struggling to show relevance to the municipality who would like a bribe. I'd like a facilitation payment to keep the streets open. No, I mean just to me, thank you very much. So we have to work, and we have to work together as a team and sort of make sure that people understand that we have to be long-term focused. Mm-hmm. RELX is doing this forever. We don't just do a show and then go away. We will be in there forever if you do this right. And we will try to make it bigger and better and cheaper and less impactful from a carbon footprint every single year, which means that we take long-term views. And that's why it matters. If it was a single show in a single place, okay, then you're going to get a certain attitude. We don't take that attitude at RELX. We're not there to buy a little show or launch a show, build it up, and then sell it. No. If we have a show, we're the natural home for that show. We want it for decades. So we'll make long-term plays with government so that they know that when we come to town, we do expect participation at every level of sustainability, or simply I'll move the show. So that's what I mean. Like, we start at the very top of government and we work down to try to explain to them really why we do need some help and some assistance. And frankly, if they don't do it, what happens is you might get yourself in the paper for the wrong reason. I mean, big shows, if you have 100,000 people coming to a show over 4 days, you've got a responsibility, not just me as an organizer, but you as a government, your responsibility to keep your citizens safe. And it takes a village. It really does.
So I really appreciate that. As an event organizer myself, amongst many of the hats, all of the scenarios you've mentioned, I found myself in one of those or another, so I can relate to that, but also the power that has and the power of that example. Very briefly, because I know we're almost out of time, but of course, we can't reduce emissions to zero tomorrow. I wish we could. And so I would love each of you just to leave our audience with maybe, and I'm going to ask you to try and keep it to 30 seconds each, but just in your view, what's the essential ingredient to what a credible pathway to net zero events actually looks like in practice? One insight. And Luke, I'm going to start with you first.
Okay, 30 seconds. And I'm sure this is going to be echoed amongst others, but measure what you're doing, because that gives you metrics in order to then make quantifiable change. And balance measurement with action. Don't just go all in on measurement at the cost of then action not happening. Make sure that you then use the information that the measurement and the assessment is giving you to take action.
Joyce?
I would echo him. He's correct. I would say the measure. I would say what Hugh said before about keeping the scorecard, making sure that we are paying attention, but making sure that also we have the partnerships. Because to what Hugh was saying before, you have to have the partnership. The thing that works great for New York is that the state is committed and the city is committed. And as a result, it makes it so much easier for us to be committed. So I would say, look for what you can do. Look around, focus on areas that you can increase. You only got to make one small change to get ready for the next step. So look for one small change that you could do to push forward, be committed to it, and measure it so that you can tell the story.
Thank you.
I can see a world. I run a P&L, and I see a world where my event directors will have two targets. One is, of course, a revenue target. Right? We are a PLC. We're in the business of building businesses, including our own, and those for shareholders. The other, you must hit that revenue target with this carbon footprint target. So it's actually measurement. Yep, you measure it, you try to make it better and better, and then accountability. Like you're also accountable for driving that down, down, down every single year. It has to become smaller every year. So it might seem strange to some of you listening to this session, but I'm here to say that in the short term, there will be revenue targets and carbon targets, and you can't say I did really well in the revenue and blew up the carbon. You got to do the whole job. You're going to have to do the whole job.
Well, thank you, Luke, Joyce, and Hugh. I think you've given our audience a great way. If you're an event organizer, if you're in the live event industry or music industry, you've given them a great way on where to get started. To quote Eleanor Roosevelt, the way to begin is to begin. And so with that, I really want to thank you all. Thanks, RELX, for having us. And to everyone here, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're around, and thank you. Have a beautiful rest of this incredible, inspirational day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.